edition of the Maryville Forum Sports Podcast, previewing the football games this week and talking about what happened last week. As always, I'm John Dykstra, the sports editor of the Maryville Forum. I'm joined by our 8-man football aficionado, Anthony Crane. Anthony, coming off last week, just how you doing this week and getting ready for another week here?
Well, it's been an interesting week around the state. Things with COVID have really kind of picked up a little bit. I think we'll get to that when we talk about like Worth County and stuff like that. And really, aside from COVID, the interesting thing has been the amount of injuries we've seen from teams, just all over, including our own Platte Valley. And I've been trying to figure that out. The last few years, I haven't seen anything like this. I don't know if it's, from the lack of summer preparations, but it's been a weird season with injuries as well.
Yeah. To be fair, Platte Valley is a very young team anyway, and you see that maybe a little bit more with young teams sometimes. I feel like people are kind of maturing and still getting into it. But yeah, they've certainly been bitten by the injury bug. But let's start with Maryville, who, with the success Coach Matt Webb's had at Maryville, you're never going to classify a game as a moral victory for them because they expect to win every game when you won as many state championships, as many games as they have. Mm-hmm. With that being said, though, they were going against the number 2 ranked team in the state at the time at their place with 2 days to prepare for it. Anthony and I both picked them to get beat pretty good in that game. And they lost by 14, 28-14. But that was a competitive game all the way through, and we're just really back and forth with really big plays by Odessa really being the difference in that game. They had a block punt for a touchdown, another punt where the ball was kind of a ground ball back to the punter, and instead of just picking it up and kicking it, he went down to a knee, picked it up, and kicked it. So they started the ball in the red zone there, and that ended up being a touchdown. And then there was another 75-yard run. So it's 3 plays from being a completely different game. I know, Anthony, you obviously didn't see it in person, but we talked about this game a little bit last week. Are you kind of the same mindset as I am that even though that's a loss and you don't feel good about it this week, that's a solid result for a Maryville team kind of still figuring themselves out before districts?
Yeah, well, and kind of what I talked about last week where I thought that Maryville could have an advantage was in coaching, where if you were going to give someone just 2 days to prep, that Coach Webb was the kind of guy you'd want. And I think maybe that kind of showed. And really going into it, I kind of saw it as a win-win situation for them. If you win, that's fantastic. But you do get some experience against one of the better teams in the state in a game that you weren't supposed to play anyways. So I was more impressed with how they hung around. And that's saying something for a team that's, it's been a roller coaster ride for the Spoof Hounds this year. And for them to, go down to Odessa and do what they did, that's really impressive. Especially with just, a couple days notice. So, they got some games coming up here that are slightly easier than what they saw this past week. And I think things are looking bright for the Spoof Hounds moving forward. We'll see, with everything going on, you never know. But if everyone can stay healthy, I like what I'm seeing from Maryville.
We say it's a roller coaster ride, but it's a kind of predictable roller coaster. Maryville has played 3 teams so far this year that are ranked in the top 4 in their respective classes, with Blair Oaks, who obviously that game was half a team playing against Blair Oaks. So even that game's hard to completely say, but Blair Oaks is a heck of a team, ranked in the top 4 in Class 3A. St. Pius is ranked 4th and undefeated in Class 2, and then Odessa like I said last week, ranked second in Class 3 as well. So those teams just bring a lot of talent to the table, and Maryville would obviously like to get some of those wins, but I don't think looking forward, you look at this team as a 3-3 team. They played as hard a schedule as anybody in 3A probably, or in Class 3 has probably played. So 3-3 is a little deceiving on their record when you look across the state at some of the other 500 teams, and you're like, well, these guys haven't played anybody. Maryville's played some good teams. You talk about their schedule getting lighter. They do play another top 5 team this week, the 5th-ranked team in Class 4. So we go, not only are you playing the class up, but you're playing a top 5 team with Lincoln College Prep, a program that Maryville used to play in the playoffs a lot and beat rather uglily in the playoffs, if that's a word. They would destroy Lincoln College Prep. Well, it's not your granddad's Lincoln College Prep anymore. They are loaded this year. They have 3 kids with Power 5 commitments already. One of them is our quarterback, who's 288 pounds, and he plays quarterback. And he's a bit of a YouTube sensation because people love a big guy playing quarterback. He's committed to Iowa State as a defensive tackle. He's not going to play quarterback there. And then they also have a defensive end committed to Auburn and a linebacker committed to Arkansas and a safety committed to Army as well. So their defense is stacked at all levels with Division I talent. And that's what Coach Webb kind of said this week, is they are one of the most individually talented teams they've gone against. To me, I think back 2 years ago to when in the state semifinals they played Trinity Catholic, who had recruited all of St. Louis and had even more Division I. They had like 12 Division I commits on that team. So I don't think they're as loaded as that Trinity Catholic team. I don't know if this Maryville team's as good as that Maryville team either. Time will tell, but they are certainly a formidable foe down there and have a lot of hype around them this season. So it'll be interesting to see. And then the week after that, we finally get back into MEC play. It feels like it's been a month, and play Savannah. Probably between them and Pius right now for the favorites in the MEC. So I guess it gets easier because they're not Odessa, because Odessa's really good. But these are some good teams coming up for the Spook.
Yeah, and I guess for me, maybe I misspoke because Savannah's been in a weird situation. You haven't really, we don't know what they are. Moving back to Lincoln College Prep, the one thing I kind of caught my eye looking through theirs was, they haven't played a real tough schedule this year either.
They haven't. No.
The one thing that stood out was the Lansing game, and that being, across the border. I don't know how good Lansing is, but
I have no idea on Lansing, Kansas.
That's a 3-score win. So you got. Hopefully, Webb picks a look at that, see what happens.
Lansing, to be clear.
Yeah, for Lansing.
Lincoln College Prep lost that game. I have some Kansas sources I probably should have called in before this for my time over there to figure out how good Lansing is. But, yeah, certainly they are – and that's kind of the sense. Like, you're not going to say it if you're Matt Webb. But he kept pointing out they are very individually talented. So I am curious to see how well they kind of gel together as a team. Mm-hmm. I looked and saw some of their huddle highlights. Those are highlights, though. People don't put their lowlights on huddle. So we will see. I don't think this is a slam dunk loss for Maryville like I thought Odessa was going in. But I think it's a super tough game, obviously. With all that talent to go against. And once again, a crazy long road trip, which is nothing new for Maryville this year. But
No, and it's good for them.
playing
I
at
think
Savannah is going to feel like a home game next week.
you
So
know, but like playing these tough teams, the way things work in Missouri playoffs, the season doesn't truly start until the end of the regular season. That's when the important games start. So it's good for them to get these tough matchups,
yeah,
especially for a young team that's still trying to gel together themselves with the things they've had going on. And I think what you've seen over the last few weeks is maybe that chemistry starting to come together a little bit. You could say, hey, they lost to Odessa, but that is, like we've talked about, one of the best teams in the state. But to only lose by 2 scores, a couple of fluke plays. So maybe we're going to see the best of Maryville these next few weeks.
and I thought one of the things we've harped on, Coach Webb's harped on, and I've harped on it because I try to be honest with what I see, is the line play has been not to Maryville standards so far this season. And I thought that took a big step forward against Odessa. I thought they looked a lot better. They didn't run the ball super well. They ran it a little bit, but I thought Connor Drake had a lot more time to throw the ball. I thought they were able to create a little bit. And they had some huge passing plays themselves in that game. They had an 80-yard touchdown to Cade Wilmus, touchdown pass, and then they had, I believe it was a 30. I could be wrong on that, 20 or 30 yards, something like that, to Caleb Kreisinger for the other score. And they had a lot more sustained drives too with passing and everything like that. So they've had some moments, and I think that was a big step forward for the offensive line. And I'd be curious, after the last game, I had a very brief conversation with Ryan Lessman after the game about it. And he's the offensive line coach, and he was just pointing out how they need to be better as well. And I didn't talk to him after this game, but I would assume that he was a lot happier with their performance this week. With that said, another team that had a good performance this week, and we'll skip to them because we can talk about what happened with their game this week, is Worth County. They beat Oric last week. I know we had talked before. We were kind of torn on that game. I think we both ended up picking Worth County, but they ended up handling business and getting a pretty good win at Oric. Just what do you take away from seeing that score and that performance, Anthony?
Yeah, for me, it depends on which podcast you listen to. I went back and forth on who I picked to win that game. Where I thought that Oric hurt themselves was they maybe were a little overconfident going into this one. But really, it all comes back to the job that Coach Healy has done with that team. We talk about every week with everything going on, and things get worse this week with COVID kind of taking over and them having to cancel the game. But I can't say enough about Andrew Alarcon and what he means to that team and what he's been able to do. It's a year ago Friday that he tore his ACL, and he's come back and I don't know if he's leading the state in rushing, if he's caught Parker Muff or not, but if not, he's number 2, and that's just really impressive, especially for a guy who opposing teams come into the game knowing number 15 is who we have to stop, and they're just not able to. That's 500 yards rushing in the last 2 weeks for him, and he's really, we could be talking about a top 10 Worth County team if they get one more score in that King City game. And so I've been really impressed with what he's done, and it's just been bad luck all year for Worth County, and it hadn't gotten any better this week.
Yeah, and we'd also be talking about a top 10 Worth County team if Aiden Gladstone was playing. We might be talking about a top 5 Worth County team if Aiden Gladstone was playing. Yeah. And right when to kind of explain why Anthony and I are talking about the game being canceled this week. They've had quarantining and stuff in I believe both Worth County and Northeast Nottoway. I know Northeast Nottoway has had a lot of it. In fact, I was talking to their softball coach, Vance Profit, today, and he said the rest of their season is pretty much canceled because they've had so many contact tracing quarantines going
Also,
on.
shout out to the Blue Jays softball team for getting the win.
Yeah, they I will say they end the season on a win. They beat LeBlanc the other day, and if you listen to this on a Thursday, our Athlete of the Week poll just went up. Jaden Adkins had 3 hits in that game. You can vote for her for Athlete of the Week if you so choose to support the Blue Jays. Just for fair and equal treatment, Duke Ingraham had a top 5 finish for West Nottoway Cross Country at the LeBlanc Invitational. He's also a candidate. And our other candidate, we will get to him later, but Mr. Carson Oberhauser, and he will we'll talk about him later, but he had himself a game too. So go vote on Athlete of the Week. Maybe we'll talk about the Maryville kids a little later. But to get back to Worth County here, that's why their game is canceled this week, and I don't know what the rest of the season holds. I haven't been informed on that. If they had to cancel this week, you would guess that they would at least have to cancel next week, which would be the North Andrew game, which maybe isn't a bad thing for the Tigers to have to cancel. But you do feel for those kids, and especially a kid like Alacon, who's put so much into this season and has kind of overcome a lot of obstacles that have been put in front of him as far as having the individual season he has. So that's a tough blow for Worth County. The reason softball can't continue, or one of the reasons, is because districts are so close. We have a little bit more time with football, so we'll see if Worth County can get back and hopefully continue their season at some point here before the season's over.
Talking to Chris Roush and Devin Albertson today, we kind of spoke about that because, in football, we're running out of time for you to have a few weeks to be able to quarantine. We're going to get to games that are really important that you can't just, cancel. And that's kind of my fear right now is, what is going to happen when that time comes if teams are unable to, especially an 8-man. 11-man, you're at least able to field a team to give yourself a chance. Yeah. And Worth County has a decent-sized team, so for them to have to cancel games, it can't be a good situation up north. So
no, it can't be. And just with that being said, I know that's in my head. I know St. Joe is going to the hybrid schedule this year or this coming week. And I'm assuming that's kind of alleviate some of that stuff because that's really helped Maryville since they've switched to that.
Yeah.
I try to not talk about those news type items in my sports coverage, but the other day, covering a Maryville soccer game, senior Justin Staples brought it up. Like he was thankful for that hybrid thing because the soccer team had been hit by contact tracing pretty hard. And just getting everybody back was a huge, huge thing for them. And even though it's a hybrid and it's cut in half, it gives the kids that would be sitting out a chance to at least go to school half the time and to study online the rest of it and to play sports. So I wonder if we're going to see a rush of more schools going to that right before the football playoffs so they don't have these contact tracing quarantines happening because, it's helped immensely with the Maryville teams.
Yep.
But so moving on, with them being canceled this week, we had another team get a big win with Northwest Nottoway going to hosting DeKalb, I'm sorry, in Hopkins, homecoming. And they got a huge win, obviously, and blew out DeKalb. As I mentioned before, Carson Oberhauser accounted for 5 touchdowns in that game. Had just a big-time game. Ran for 3, threw for a couple more. Just, Anthony, you were at that game. Give us a breakdown of what you saw from the Muskets. And I know DeKalb's not not great shakes this year, and not the most challenging team they have on their schedule. That's for sure. But what do you see from the Muskets that you liked?
That they did what they were supposed to do. I think that was the most impressive thing. It's as great as Carson was. I don't know if he had 100 total yards from scrimmage. Um,
Yeah.
and that's I don't want to take anything away from Northwest Nottoway because, like I said, they did what they were supposed to do. DCAB is just truly awful. You feel for them. You see the kids out there; they're giving their best, but they would twice turn the ball over uh, inside their own 10-yard line. That led to two of Carson's touchdowns. But one of the bright spots that I've really seen from that team, or bright spots, really, has been that freshman class. Aiden Blackford had a big game. The game I was at before that against Platte Valley, he made some big plays.
Yeah.
That's why I think that brighter days are ahead for that program. And
Michael
you can
Goff
see
is great too.
Michael Goff, yeah. He got a lot of praise from Mountain City when I talked to those guys. They really liked him at linebacker and what he's able to do. And so it's really, and that was the thing I wanted them to do last week when we talked about this game was, hey, play 2 quarters. That's what it should be. I know they were disappointed a little bit that they gave up the 1 touchdown, but in the end, it was a 2-quarter game. I don't, most time I don't think teams love that. You practice all week, you want to play 4 quarters, but for them, they've spent so much time being on the other end of that for them it was just such a great feeling to finally be the ones ending that game early and getting getting an early start for homecoming. So that was a great night overall for the Muskets, and
Well,
we'll talk about later about their games coming up, but they have a few games that I think they can keep rolling. They have a pretty decent season.
Well, to take your words earlier, kind of rough on DeKalb, you said they were truly awful. But coming back a couple years ago, people were saying those kind of things about Northwest Nottoway. And I think we talk a lot about the top 10 and top 5 and everything. I think the biggest jump, or maybe sometimes the most difficult jump you can make, is from truly awful to a solid team that's going to be around 500 or a little under, a team that people have to prepare for and take seriously. And I think that's the jump we've kind of seen Northwest Nottoway make this year, where they will go from an automatic win on team schedules to obviously there are some games where they're outmatched, but for the most part, teams take them seriously and have to prepare for the Muskets. And I think the next few years, like you say about the young kids, you're going to see that continued growth. And maybe this first step was hard to get from truly awful to where they are now. And going forward to climb to 500 and above 500 with those young kids they've got, maybe that's a little easier climb, and one that you can kind of see after the success they've had this year and winning some games. Obviously, they've got 2 wins now, but moving forward this week, we'll just dive in and talk about right here. They've got LeBlanc coming up, and that's a road game in LeBlanc. LeBlanc is, I think, probably, I haven't seen either one play, but you're more the expert than I am. They're better than DeKalb.
Yeah.
They should provide a tougher game than them, but they're still a team that Northwest Nottoway should be able to play with, and dare I say, should be able to beat this week. What are your impressions of that game coming up, Anthony? And what do you think of the challenge that lies in taking that road trip to St. Joe?
Well, last year they played a fantastic game. The Muskets, that was their lone win. I expect similar things this year. LeBlanc is kind of in that Northwest situation, I guess, where they got some young talent. They have a quarterback that's just in his second year of playing football. Last year, he threw 27 touchdowns. Pretty talented young kid. the grandson of the great Tony Dudek.
Tony,
For you St. Joe.
legend. Love Tony.
Uh, yeah, and so I think it'll be a great game. Both teams are better coached this year, but they're still both. You can see them growing and moving in the right direction. So I think it'll be a great game, but a game that the Muskets, like we talked about, they should win. I think we talked about if we go back in the season a little bit when we talked about the Stewartsville game. That was a game that we felt like Northwest should have won, and they kind of stubbed their toe a little bit. This is another one of those situations where I think it's a disappointment if they leave St. Joe with a loss.
Yeah, and I think they need to kind of win this game too. I mean, obviously every team advances to districts, and you're going to be in districts. But they end the year with Southwest Livingston and South Holt, Nottoway Holt. Two top 10 teams, two very good teams, explosive offenses. You want to get this win 2 in a row right here, get to 3 wins, because those last 2 games are going to be tough. And if you can get 3 wins going into districts, it'll really help your seeding, and it'll maybe put you in a game where you're not having to play a Stanberry or a Mound City or somebody like that in the first round. Maybe you can still play a tough team, but a team where you can at least maybe compete with and play a 4-quarter game with. So it'll be interesting. This is a pivotal game for their seeding. I know they're fighting with Platte Valley and Albany in their district for seeding purposes. So it'll be
really, I mean,
to see how they come out.
For them, you want Mountain City again.
I guess
with the things that are happening over there, injury wise, that's almost a game you want, and that's surprising for any of us to actually say. But
let's not give the Panthers more bulletin board material. I mean, they just pretty much play this podcast to get pumped up before games now. So let's stay away from that until we have to here coming up when we get to South Holt. But well, actually, let's just go into it. South Holt plays Mound City this week. It's a battle of Holt County. Explain why you say that about Mound City, and I know they had a tough game last week losing to East Atchison, and now they have a tough game this week with South Holt and Nottoway Holt coming to town. So explain to me where Mound City is at this point, and why it's good news probably for Drew Quinlan and the boys down at South Holt, Nottoway Holt.
Well, I can't put into words my disappointment for what this game is going to be now. Mountain City is going to come into the game without their starting quarterback, without Landon Papa, without Caden Musser. Another player is likely out. And really, if they subtracted their best 4 to 5 players last week in that East Atchison loss. And, for a month now, I've been kind of looking forward to this game as a good measuring stick to see where South Holt is, because in the last 3 weeks they've kind of been feeding off the bottom of the 275, and this was going to be a good game to see where they're at if they learn from that Southwest loss. But with everything going on in Mountain City, it's going to take a miracle for them to keep this game close, I think. And I don't say that because I'm apparently the Mountain City hater, but just because of the injuries. It's disappointing, but a good opportunity for the Spartans to take out some frustration on their neighbors in Holt County.
And they took out some frustration. We don't want to skip over what they did last week, but we can't kind of skip over it because they crushed Stewartsville, and everybody kind of saw that one coming. I think it'll be interesting because, as we harped on earlier this season, they kind of erased that by beating Worth County, but then going to get crushed the next week by Southwest Livingston. South Holt, Nottoway Holt struggled with the big boys over the years, and I don't know. We named a lot of skill players that are out for Mound City, but I'd be curious how their lines stack up if they lost some guys there too, because that's where Southfield struggled over the years with them, and it'll be interesting to see if they can control the line of scrimmage. It might not matter. Maybe the skill players are just that different between Mound City's backups and South Hope Nottoway Health starters. But kind of the game within the game there, I think, is going to be seeing who's getting the push up front, and if
Yeah.
and if Drew Quinlan's having to pull a rabbit out of his hat to get the ball downfield and run the ball and get some scores, or if it's just easy for him because the line is opening up gaping holes. Um,
I
we'll,
think I,
we'll
thi- I think for the Spartans, that's what you need. Is you want this to be easy. Uh,
yeah.
Maybe not like Northwest, not away in DCAB last week, but this needs to be a game that you win easily, because if you don't, if you struggle with a Mountain City team that is without its top 4 players, that's concerning moving forward. Maybe not in the following weeks, but once districts rolls around and you have to go up against a Pattonsburg or a North Andrew, that'd be concerning.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting moving forward, seeing what they can do this week. I'm not quite as locked in on them losing. I know they got crushed by East Action last week without some of those guys in the second half. East Action was already going on their way towards that win, but they lost some of those guys and it hurt. But you give their coaching staff a week to prepare with some new guys and new spots. Mound City's never been lacking for talent. The results over the years show that. So give some of their younger kids a week to maybe step in, and I think it'll be a better showing than what they showed against East Action when they were kind of thrust into roles. Is it going to equal a win? We'll save that for later in the podcast. But I think it will be a better showing against South Holt. And like I said, I'm more interested to see the play up front and see who wins that battle in the trenches. And moving into our last team to talk about of the week, it's Platte Valley. As we referenced earlier in the show, they've been hit hard with injuries, and even a perfectly healthy Platte Valley team was going to struggle with Southwest Livingston last week. They struggled mightily. It was a half game. They scored a touchdown late to get on the board, but 60-6 final there. So, but their schedule goes from about polar opposites this week because they went Southwest Livingston, who is the newly minted number 2 team in the state. I saw in Anthony and the boys 8-man poll this week.
Mm-hmm.
But now they go to surely the last place team in the state if you were doing that poll all the way through with DeKalb. And DeKalb takes a beating on this podcast. I hope nobody from DeKalb's listening, but it's been a rough year. So they get DeKalb this week. Should be interesting. It's a road trip to DeKalb. But for Platte Valley, it always depends who plays in this game for Platte Valley, but still, even shorthanded, what do you look for from Platte Valley in this game, Anthony?
A win. I know Platte Valley is minus a few players, to say the least, but there's still even with what they have, they are more talented than DCAB. And this is the last game of the year where I think they'll have that chance to get a win. And so I think that's what you have to see from them. I think it'll be a close game. I know that there were a few plays last week where DCAB showed some life. They had a kickoff return for a touchdown that was called back. Late there in the first half, they switched quarterbacks. They put Miller at receiver, he's smaller, more athletic, and moved another guy to quarterback. And they had some success throwing the ball. Now, whether they go to that moving forward or not, I don't know. But this is still a game that Platte Valley needs to win to kind of salvage what's left of the season. where they are is no fault of their own, just the freak injuries and stuff like that. But this is a game that I think Platte Valley needs to win. Maybe they don't win easily, but still a game they need to win. Get out of that 275 cellar. You don't want to be down there with decab. That way you can have maybe a little bit of momentum moving forward in next year. And like I said, you want to take these opportunities for these young guys to gain some experience. You want them to have some success. And this is a good opportunity for them to have that in what's been a brutal season so far for Platte Valley.
And I'm holding my judgment until I see how they do against DeKalb and if they can handle DeKalb the way I hope they can for their sake. But Stewartsville is next week. It's a home game. I'm not completely counting them off for the rest of the season. I know Stewartsville's had some wins this year. Is a good team, but they're also a team that, especially if, we know Carter Luke and Trevor McQueen are done for the year, but if they can get maybe some other guys back, like Jose Rivera, we've been talking about him for a while, but if they can get some guys back and establish a little bit of an offense and be able to score some points, the defense hasn't been as behind as the offense has without their guys, obviously. And I think they can play some defense with Stewartsville. But that's a debate for next week. And if they don't perform well against DeKalb, I won't be having that debate with you because I will chalk that up as a Stewartsville win. But I'm hopeful for Platte Valley that they can maybe turn that into an interesting game next week and one that we can talk about and maybe one that Anthony can go watch down there. So we'll see. Time will tell on that one, but it'll certainly be interesting to figure out in moving forward. But let's end the podcast here with some picks and go through and figure out who's going to win this week. And we'll start out with Maryville, who we started with last time. They're Lincoln College Prep. I will be in attendance to watch this game on that blue Smurf turf they got down there, and we will see how they play against the D1 guys. But I'm going out on a limb. Last week I picked against Maryville. They actually had me nervous. I was going to pick against them, and they would have won, which would have been – I probably never would have heard the end of it. But this week, I don't know. On paper, you say Lincoln Prep should win this game. It's a home game for them. They've got the talent edge, you would say. But I don't know. I just have a hard time seeing Coach Webb lose 2 games in a row, seeing this team lose 2 games in a row. I think they made some big strides with Odessa last week. And I think the Spoofhounds find a way. I think, as I mentioned earlier, this team – Lincoln College Prep has a documentary being made about them right now because of the season they're having and and kind of the storylines on that team and some really great stories that are some kids that are easy to root for. And I understand why they're making that movie. But I think this is the point in the documentary where you have that adversity that you have to overcome the rest of the year because you take a tough loss that kind of sneaks up on you. I think that's what the Spoofhounds are going to deliver this week to the Blue Tigers. And I think Maryville finds a way to win this game. I'm going 29 to 21 in this one. Thinking we got a 2-point conversion mixed in there. Maybe after maybe two 2-point conversions after a missed extra point early or something. I'm going off a limb there with that score, but I'm thinking it's a 1-score game. But I think Maryville finds a way anyway. So Anthony, why don't you be the downer and bring us down here?
It is funny. I will point out that it's always odd how when people predict scores, it's always an odd number. It'd be like 29-17.
Yeah.
But for me, I think there's too much talent on this Lincoln Prep team. I do think that it's a close game. I will go Lincoln 28, Maryville 24.
You got Connor Weiss kicking a field goal? That'd be the first time this year. Connor is good on his extra points, so I'll give you a bit of a half situation. I could see it happening. He's looked good, but 24. Maybe you're right. Maybe they go for 2, but like I said, Connor's looked good on his extra points, so I don't know.
Or maybe he misses 4 extra points. Who knows?
Well, now that's a downer. Connor, don't let Anthony get in your head. You just keep kicking that ball.
I'm rooting for Connor. I like Connor. He's a good kid.
Okay. We're different on that game, so let's move on to Platte Valley DeKalb. We referenced it earlier. How it's a must-win. I'm gonna say Platte Valley finds a way to get that win. You never know who's playing for Platte Valley is the tough part, but I think they're well coached, even if they're shorthanded, and I think they just find a way to win this game when they have to, and get that second win of the season. So I'm going with Platte Valley in this one.
Yep, same. I think it's a good game, probably a low-scoring game, and I think Platte Valley edges them out.
Moving on to the Battle of Holt County here, Mound City versus South Holt, Nottoway Holt. I think from how we were talking before, I know where you're going, Anthony, so I'll let you go first and make your pick in this one.
Spartans by 35.
Whoa. Panther bulletin board material. I don't want –
Listen, I want to be wrong. I want it to be a good game in a way. But as far as our 8-man teams that have the opportunity to move forward in the playoffs, there's also part of me that hopes it isn't, so that they show something. But, like I said, I've been looking forward to this game for a while, and I really feel bad for those kids from Mountain City because they were showing something, and hopefully, the concussion for Mustard doesn't linger. Hopefully, Papa gets back because he's a fun player to watch. But for this week, you have to go with the Spartans, and you have to go with them winning big. They don't like Mountain City, and if he gets up by 35, I don't see Coach Peterson letting off. I think it'll be they feel that way about them. Kind of like East Atchison. That's where I think now. While Mountain City has this week to get prepared, I don't know if they're going to have the same energy that South Holt, Nottoway Holt will. As far as looking forward to this game, because I think this is a game that if you're South Holt, Nottoway Holt, this is one you circle on your calendar every year, and I think they'll take any opportunity they can to beat the Panthers by as much as possible.
Well, you gave the Panthers plenty of bulletin board material there, so it's only fair that I give the Spartans some.
I said I hoped it was
a complete slap in the face to the defending 2-time defending state champions. I don't care who you're going out there with. They're still the Panthers. They are a quality team. Obviously, win completely together, and I think some of their younger guys could show something this week too. You say that South Holt looks forward to this game every year. Well, they also lose this game every year, so that hasn't been going well for them so far. So I'm going to go with the Panthers finding a way to win this game at the end. I'm going 36-34 with a late touchdown winning this game. Mound City celebrates, and South Holt, Nottoway Holt, is struggling again with a good team. Although I will say their timing on playing these teams that they've struggled with in the past has been fortunate so far with what was going on with Worth County in week 1 and then what's going on with Mound City this week. But I don't think they pull this one out. I'm going Panthers. I can't see them losing 2 games straight. You're the 8-man expert. You're probably right on it. But I'm going with tradition, and tradition never graduates, and it never gets too injured to put out some good kids on the field. So the young Panthers strike this week, in my opinion.
I don't know what the people of Graham and Oregon did to you, but I don't know if they deserve this kind of disrespect.
You know what the people of Oregon did to me, but anyway, we'll move forward. I'm not biased in my picks. I call them the way I see it. I don't see how Hope beats Mound City this week for the first time in like forever, then I'm wrong. But I'm going with history, and I'm going with the Panthers. And this is coming from a Panther hater, and I very much like the people of Graham. And I won't have you disparage it like that. I could name the whole volleyball starting lineup again like I had to do a couple weeks ago. People, Graham, I got nothing against you. I just don't think your football is going to win this week. I apologize. Sean Emerson, principal down there, is one of the nicest guys I've ever met. He's awesome. The volleyball team get along with them super well. They're having a good season this year. Been hit a little bit by the quarantine lately, but they're getting it back together. Nothing against Graham, but I just don't think your football team's going to win this week. So,
you realize in the last 6 matchups, these teams are 3-3. You act like South Holt, Nottoway Holt hasn't beaten Mountain City this decade.
It's all about the rings. Get you one of them. Mound City has the last couple of years. So Brody Day is not walking through that door. Alan Ottman is not walking through that door.
Drew Quinlan is.
Drew Quinlan's a good player. How many times he beat Mound City? Not very many. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Let's go with the Mound City team. Poor Drew's going out there basically on his own against 5 all-state kids. Those all-state kids aren't walking through that door either.
The future all-state kids are with the young guns that Mound City should bring to
the table. This is why I'm the 8-man guy, is because I know the background, and Mound City is soon to be not near the top of the 275 conference.
Bulletin board material. Just keep shooting it out there for those old Panthers. Been in this area a long time. Mountain City's always good. They always find a way. So we'll see.
I'll point out that I read today that the Spartans junior varsity team finished the season 5-0.
Oh, that's pretty high quality. Are they going to be helping Drew Quinlan on? They probably played Drew Quinlan on the JV team because they like to run up the score in Oregon. I know that. So, poor JV team.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, Coach Peterson's not going to talk to me, but it's okay. That's why
he may talk to you.
The South Homer. So anyway, moving forward here to our last game of the day. Let's go with the big matchup in St. Joe, LeBlanc and Northwest Nottoway. I think this is a quality matchup. I think there are reasons to go for each team in this. I've gone first on 2 of these. Anthony, you've gone first on 1. So let's finish it up, and I'll let you go first on this one. LeBlanc, Northwest Nottoway. Who you got?
Muskets 42, LeBlanc 35. Ooh. I think the defenses will be better than last year, but I still think the Muskets find a way to edge them out. and I think they win 2 in a row and really gain some momentum as the season comes to a close.
See, the correct answer, though, is Northwest Nottoway 48, LeBlanc 28. I see 3-score game. I think Northwest Nottoway is finding their stride now. I think even before last week was the obvious DeKalb slaughter. Like DeKalb, that's going to happen to DeKalb. But I think even the games they were losing, they were showing progress before that and playing some good football and keeping games tighter than they had been in the past. And I think this is a good example of a game they won last year, and I think they've only gotten better since last year. So you add 2 more scores on to what they did last year, and you give them a 20-point win here down in St. Joe, and I think they come away with that happy and have some momentum headed into, like I said, a brutal end of the season with Southwest Livingston and then South Holt, Nottoway Holt, which will be angry coming off that loss to Mount City a couple weeks before. So that's a tough way to end.
I'm sure you'll find a way to pick the muskets in that one too.
We got 2 weeks to make the decision on that one, so we will see. We will see. But in the end of the podcast, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this week there are 4 local games, and I am super happy to say the Forum will be at all 4 of them. I will be at the Maryville game against Lincoln College Prep. Anthony will be at the Holt County Showdown with Mount City and South Holt, Nottoway Holt. Cody Thorne, my former boss at the News Press and my former boss at the Maryville Forum, he is covering the LeBlanc game for us against Northwest Nottoway. And Derek Zimmerman-Geyer, he has worked for the News Press before, and I knew from his college work, he's going down to DeKalb to watch DeKalb and Platte Valley for us and write about that. So Friday night, Saturday morning, depending how much of a night owl you are, go visit the Maryville Forum, and we should have 4 football stories up for you that day. And we'll cover the area games from every angle since Worth County doesn't have a game. So make sure and check those out. But that'll do it for this week on the Forum. We'll see next week when we come back who's got bragging rights in that Holt County Showdown. But just a hint, it's going to be the Panthers. So good luck, South Holt, Nottoway Holt.